The Romulan Neutral Zone is a stretch of interstellar space that separates the United Federation of Planets from the Romulan Star Empire. It is an area of space that is so sensitive, simply crossing into it without permission from the outside constitutes an act of war. Greetings and welcome back to Checkpoint Gaming, Star Trek Ascendancy. For this episode, we will be going over combat, invasion, and conquest. With space battles, they can be initiated from the player's turn by spinning command against rival ship found in a single sector or in a single sector where both players have ships. Each space battle consists of a number of combat rounds where both players roll to score hits, take casualties, then decide to either retreat or continue to battle. The player who initiated the space battle is the attacker, while the player who is being attacked is the defender. Normally, space battles take place in between adjacent sectors. In this case, each player's ship will remain in their own sector and fire into the adjacent sector. With any special rules that apply to any sector of a battle will apply to the whole battle. And if a player has a ship in more than one adjacent sector, said player can use a command to have all the ships in the adjacent sectors to join in on the attack. When space battles occur in the same sector, it is between rivals. This can occur under a number of different factors, such as when a trade agreement is broken or a cloaking device is used. Although there can only ever be one attacker in a battle, there is a possibility that there can be more than one defender. If the sector being attacked contains ships from more than one opponent, then all of those opponents are the defenders. The attacker will have to decide how they will divide their dice between the defenders before rolling to hit. With all the defenders' hits, they are directed toward the attacker. Each defender will choose separately whether or not they want to retreat after each combat round. The battle is over when one of these conditions have been met. 1. All the ships belonging to the defenders or belonging to the attacker have been eliminated, or 2. The defender or the attacker has been routed. In order to score a hit, the player will need to roll equal to or higher than their hit roll. To determine their hit roll, the player will have to defer to the current weapon level. The opponent's shield modifier is added to the required hit roll, thus making it harder to hit. With fleets, they may have to roll separately, depending upon their special rules. For every hit, it will destroy a rival ship. If there's a choice of how the casualties are going to be taken care of, the player who inflicted the hit will choose how to go about allocating them. Both players will roll a number of dice that is equal to the number of ships they have involved in combat. Unless otherwise stated, both players will roll their two hit rolls concurrently and they will take casualties simultaneously.
With any Breen ships, they have the chance to reroll all of their failed hit roll, but only if they are found within Breen territory. And because of Ketracel White, the Dominion player is allowed to exhaust one command token in order to reroll all of their failed hit rolls within a single round of combat during a given space battle or planetary invasion. This can also be done in any player's turn and can be done in each round of combat or invasion.
If the situation arises where the opponent's shield modifier will increase the player's two-hit roll above 6, then the player cannot score a hit on any of their opponent's ships. If both players are in this situation, then the attack cannot succeed, requiring one of the players to retreat from combat in order to end the space battle.
The exception to this occurs when dealing with the Klingons due to their inability to retreat, accompanied by their ability to automatically hit when they roll a 6. So in this situation, if their opponent chooses not to retreat, then the Klingon player will just keep rolling until they roll 6s or the two players agree that the Klingon player won in order to save time.
In regards to starbases, they provide support to the player's space battles. If any ships that are involved in the combat or in orbit of system that they control with a starbase at the time they make their hit rolls, roll an additional die to hit. However, starbases cannot fight on their own.
With the Cardassian weaponized starbases advancement, it increases the number of additional dice rolled to hit from that of 1 to that of 3.
With First Strike, it is only available under certain advancements or rules and are only used in the initial combat round of the battle. With some advancements, they give the ships or nodes in the first combat round of a space battle or planetary invasion. If a player's ship has First Strike, their opponent must take casualties before rolling to hit with their ship and nodes. With First Strike, it also does not grant an extra attack before combat begins. It simply forces the opponent to take casualties before firing back in the first combat round. If both sides can use First Strike in a space battle or planetary invasion, then neither side may use it. After taking casualties, each player will assess the status of their ships. Starting with the attacker, they will decide if they will retreat or not. The defenders will decide separately and in turn order if they wish to retreat after each battle. When retreating, it may be made at full impulse speed, but it will have to be done through existing space lanes. So when a player retreats, they cannot place a new space lane with a retreat movement. Upon retreating, all ships in the sector must move out of that sector as a group, and the whole group must end their retreat in the same sector and not adjacent to their opponent's ships. However, ships that are unable to remove due to rival ships blocking the space lane may not retreat. If none of the players involved in combat choose to retreat, or they are unable to retreat, then another combat round begins. Without exhausting any additional commands, continue to fight additional combat rounds until either the attacker or the defender retreat or a player has no more ships remaining. With the winner of the space battle, it is the player who destroys all of their opponent's ships or forces them to retreat. The winning player may make a tactical maneuver with some or all of their ships after the space battle is over. With a tactical maneuver, it is a move that is made at up to full impulse speed and does not exhaust a command and have to move through existing space lanes. So players cannot place new space lanes when doing this. All the ships in a sector that move must move out of their sector as a group, and the whole group must end their tactical maneuver in the same sector.
With Andorian field testing, whenever the Andorians win a space battle, they may claim one destroyed ship which may be used in later turns as research tokens. However, they must be spent before any actual research tokens are used, for the Andorian player cannot hoard rival ships. But if the Andorians lose a space battle, they cannot claim a ship. They also cannot claim Borg cubes. With the Klingon special rule of Ever Victorious, whenever the Klingon player wins a space battle or fights in one of their where both sides destroy all of their opponent's ships, then they will gain one culture if their opponent fields 3 or more ships. If there are multiple defenders in a space battle and the Klingons were defeated, the Klingons will still gain one culture if any one defender that fielded 3 or more ships had at least 3 of their ships destroyed or retreated from the space battle. But if the space battle is cancelled for one reason or another, then the Klingon player will not gain any culture. With the Klingon advancement of Cult of Kahless, it allows the Klingon player to sacrifice their ships to destroy opposing ships instead of rolling to hit. Choosing to do this will prevent said player from rolling to hit with other ships in the battle for this combat round. The opponent will still roll to hit with all of their ships, and casualties are to be removed after all to hit rolls have been made. Since the player that inflicted the hits chooses which ships are hit, they will not normally choose the ones that are already going to die from this card. With the Romulan Superior Targeting Array, it allows the player to reroll 1 die in each combat round.
And when one of the player's ships occupies a developed system that they do not control, said player may use a command to invade the planet. If there are rival ships or fleets in the system, they have to be attacked first in a space battle before invading the system. If the invasion is successful, the attacking player will take control of the system. Each planetary invasion consists of a number of rounds of combat in which both players will roll to score hits, take casualties, and then decide whether to surrender, retreat, or keep fighting. With surrender, it can happen before the invasion begins, and with surrendering, it counts as a successful invasion. With planetary invasions, they are a one-way affair. Players may not use command to have their nodes initiate an attack against ships occupying their system.
Due to the Vulcan's special rule of logical observers, they may not invade or attempt hegemony against any system that is controlled by a rival that has a lower ascendancy than them.
For scoring hits, the attacker will roll the number of dice equal to the number of ships they have in the system. Then an defender will roll a number of dice equal to the number of nodes they have built on the planet, including the control node and starbase if present. With every die rolled, it has a chance to score a hit. With starbases, they do not fight in planetary invasions, only in space battles. As in space battles, both players use their current weapons levels to determine their hit roll. To score a hit, the player will need to roll equal to or higher than their opponent's hit roll. Each player will add their opponent's shield modifiers to their hit roll, making it harder to hit.
With the Vulcan ambassadors, they take no part in a planetary invasion. However, the Vulcan High Command advancement will give an additional die to the defender, but only if an ambassador is present. They do this regardless of who is attacking the system and regardless of the outcome. The ambassador will remain within the system. Regarding the Dominion infiltrators, the Dominion player can have up to 5 of them in play at any given time. With these infiltrators, the Dominion player can exhaust 2 command tokens in order to move 1 infiltrator from the Great Link to any system found on the board, even if said system isn't connected to the Great Link. They can also exhaust 1 command token in order to move an infiltrator to any adjacent system, or to move them back to the Great Link. Regarding rival players, they are allowed to return a Dominion infiltrator back to the Great Link, which is done during the rival's command phase by them exhausting 2 command tokens.
When taking casualties, each hit scored by the defender's node will destroy one of the attacker's ships. With the hits by the attacker, they do not necessarily destroy the nodes. The number of hits scored by the attacker will determine the result of the planetary invasion. Depending upon how many hits the attacker scores will determine 1 of 3 possible results: successful invasion, collateral damage, or total annihilation. With a successful invasion, it is represented by the attacker scoring more hits than the defender has nodes, representing an overwhelming invasion with the player taking control of the system and winning combat. From there, place the attacker's control node onto the system, replacing the existing control node if the system was controlled by a rival. With that said, players are not allowed to simply spend a culture token to remove the opponent's control node. This is also not optional. The attacker has to take control of the system as well as having to take any casualties held by the defender. With collateral damage, if the attacker scores fewer hits than the defender has nodes, then the attacker must choose a number of resource nodes to destroy as equal to the number of hits scored. However, control node is not destroyed. Another combat round is then fought unless the attacker chooses to retreat or the defender chooses to surrender. With Total Annihilation, the attacker scores a number of hits equal to the number of resource nodes found in the system, including the control node, leaving the surface completely razed due to the invasion. This means that all of the nodes on the planet have been destroyed, including the control node. When the invasion is over, the system will need to be recolonized in a future turn. So neither the attacker nor the defender has won the combat. The defender will also lose the starbase and will have to surrender a command. However, the attacker won't have control over the starbase either. The first player to take control of the system will claim the starbase, thus giving said player a command token. This will also extend to any uncontrolled systems that possess a starbase. Even if all the attacker's ships were destroyed, the results of the invasion are the same. That is, all the attacker's ships could be destroyed and still have successfully invaded the system. With some advancements, they automatically destroy a node of each attacker's ship. This prevents them from making a successful invasion. In that combat round, a successful invasion requires capturing a controlled node intact. The only possible result are collateral damage or total annihilation.
With Cardassian annexation protocols, it allows them to treat a total annihilation result as a successful invasion, even if the total annihilation was the result of metagenic weapons or other node-destroying advancements.
If the defender's control node survives and all the attacker's ships are destroyed, then the invasion has been successfully repelled, the invasion is over, and the defender retains control of the system. After a combat round, the attacker may choose to retreat or end the invasion. When retreating, the attacker will have to make an impulse speed retreat movement. With the planetary invasion, although the defender cannot retreat, they may choose to surrender. If the defender is going to surrender, they may choose to do so before any combat round. If the defender surrenders, then the attacker will immediately gain control of the sector and the invasion is over. If the invasion was unsuccessful and it was not repelled, then another combat round will begin. Without spending any additional commands, continue to fight any additional rounds of combat until either the attacker retreats, the defender surrenders, or the invasion is resolved. If the attacker takes control of the rival's intact research node, the players whose research node was captured may choose one of their active projects and give it to the attacker. If there are any research tokens found on the card, they are discarded. If the attacker captures more than one research node, they must hand over a project per node captured. If a research node is destroyed, then nothing is captured. If the invaded player does not have any active projects, then no project is seized. With projects that were captured, place them into the attacker's project area. If the captured advancements refer to its original owner, it now refers to its new owner instead, including things like the systems and trade agreements. This chain of advancement cards also extends to planetary invasions or through special rules. Some special rules can also allow a player to take an advancement card from another player. If doing so, it is done at random in the rival's deck. With starbases, since they are too valuable to destroy, once they have been placed onto a system, it will remain there for the rest of the game. The exception to this is when the Borg are being used during the game where they get to destroy starbases during an invasion. When the control of a system changes hands, control over the starbase will also be handed over. Upon taking control of a starbase, the rival who lost it will hand over one of their command tokens to the rival player. With this command token, place it with the rest of the command tokens but have it exhausted. When a starbase is captured, only the new owner's special rule that affects the starbase will apply. With the result of total annihilation, the defender loses control of the starbase, loses its command, but the attacker will not control it. The first player to take control of an uncontrolled starbase will gain the associated command. With some planets, they may be developed but uncontrolled and may be invaded normally. With uncontrolled planets, they do not have a control node to fight, so it's only the uncontrolled planet resource nodes and the rare starbase that add dice as normal. For rolling for the uncontrolled systems attacks, the player to the attacker's right will do the honors. With warp-capable civilizations, weapons head roll, they are modified by the shields as normal. With some civilization exploration cards, they will direct the player to place a number of warp tokens on the system along with developing nodes. The number of warp tokens corresponds to the level of that given civilization. The higher the civilization level, the better the weapons and shields will be. When a player takes control of a system that has a warp-capable civilization, they discard the warp tokens. With a level 1 civilization, their weapons head roll is 5+, shield's modifier is that of 1, and their hegemony resistance is 1. With a level 2 civilization, their weapons head roll is 4, their shield's modifier is 2, and their hegemony resistance is 2. With a level 3 civilization, their weapons head roll is 3+, their shield's modifier is 3, and their hegemony resistance is 3. With a level 4 civilization, their weapons head roll is 2+, their shield's modifier is 4, and their hegemony resistance is 4. Rather than keeping the civilization card on the table, the player can just calculate the independence head roll by subtracting the number of tokens from 6. With the number of warp tokens, it is equal to their shield modifier and is their base hegemony resistance. Their hegemony resistance is also increased by the number of nodes that are found in the system. When a ship is occupying a developed sector that a player doesn't control, they may attempt to culturally take over the system through hegemony. The resistance the system has to hegemony will depend upon how developed its infrastructure is and its cultural ascendancy. In order to attempt hegemony, the player will have to have at least 2 culture tokens, one for the attempt and the other to take control if successful. The exception to this is if the player has an advancement that will reduce the cost of cultural hegemony it will need by 1 culture token. To determine the hegemony resistance of a system, it is equal to the number of structures found in the system plus the ascendancy of the player who controls it. Both starbases and nodes, but not the Vulcan ambassadors, count as structures, and each will add 1 to the system hegemony resistance. To attempt cultural hegemony, the player will have to exhaust a command and spend a culture. Next, they roll a die and add their cultural ascendancy to it. If the total is higher than the hegemony resistance of the system, the player will have to pay the additional culture token to take control of the system. This means replacing the existing controlled node of the system with their own. And even if a player's ascendancy is high enough relative to the system's hegemony resistance to automatically succeed, said player will still have to pay a total of 2 culture, 1 for the attempt and 1 to take control. The player can alternatively think of their ascendancy as reducing a system's resistance.
When it comes to the Ferengi, since other species find them repugnant, hegemony is difficult for them to make, as seen with the fact that the Ferengi do not add their ascendancy when making a hegemony attempt. They can still attempt hegemony, but if they do, it's that much harder since they cannot add their current ascendancy to the attempt. For the Dominion, they can't attempt cultural hegemony against a rival system. However, they are allowed to try cultural hegemony against an independent system.
When a player discovers a level 1, 2, or 3 warp-capable civilization, the exploration card will direct the player to develop some of the system's capability and place a number of warp tokens onto the system. With these warp tokens on its independent, warp-capable civilization, it will add to the hegemony resistance. Since independent civilizations don't have control nodes, their hegemony resistance is equal to the developed resource nodes on it plus the number of warp tokens found on the system. With pre-warp inhabited systems, players cannot attempt cultural hegemony against them. Instead, they will have to colonize them during the building phase. As in a planetary invasion, when a player takes control of a system that contains its starbase, the player will take a command from the player who previously controlled it. Likewise, if a player takes control of a rival system that has a resource node on it, that player will take one of their projects. So with that said, that's what you need to know about combat, invasion, and conquest for Star Trek Ascendancy. With that taken care of, we can start talking about variants of the game. If you like this episode, feel free to give it a like, and if you want to stay up to date on any future episodes we upload, go ahead and subscribe. You can also support us on Patreon for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/checkpointgaming. See you in the next episode, and happy gaming.